On today's program, including complete show notes, go to elevatorradioshow.com and do a keyword search for show 525.
You're tuned in to the Elevator Radio Show, a weekly program dedicated to covering news and information on elevators, escalators, and moving walkways. Produced in the wee hours of the morning, a new show is uploaded every Wednesday, sometimes even before you get out of bed. Listen to some of the comments sent in from our audience.
Rob from New York writes, Tom, are you f***ing insane? You actually get up at 2 a.m. each Wednesday to put this show out? Man, you must love elevators. Tim from Illinois writes, I'm not sure why I listened, but ever since I tuned into the first show back in 2007, I've been addicted. Matt in Texas writes, I like your safety messages, Tom. It's important to remember them each and every day. And he also adds,
when am I going to win the monthly prize pack giveaway?
Ron from California sent this in. Despite your inability to pronounce words in the English language, I tune in each week and am glad that you offer this service to the industry. It's better than Google News alerts. Sarah from Washington writes, love the show, Tom, and look forward to it each week. I'm glad I signed up for the newsletter. You provide a valuable resource for the industry, not only for North America, but worldwide.
Enjoy the show. And now, here's your sleep-deprived host, Tom Seibert.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Seibert, your host for the Elevator Radio Show podcast. It is good to be here this Wednesday morning, where it is March 13th. I had to look, and I should know that because I got the show notes right in front of me, but it is good to have you here. I want to first start out the show by thanking so many of you for writing and emailing me through your writing regarding the tragic fatality that occurred in North Dakota. It involved an elevator mechanic who was working on an escalator and was, according to preliminary reports, was electrocuted. Awful, terrible story. Just a humble reminder of just how dangerous the work that we do out there each and every day. And no matter what kind of equipment you're working on, electricity is something you can't see. It's one of those things that you got to make sure proper lockout, tagout procedures are taking place, and you're doing everything you can possibly do to prevent any type of accident like this happening. So it's an awful fatality, and I got to tell you, whenever I received an email like this or learn news of a mechanic being injured or fatally injured on the job, it's awful. I literally, it like takes me back a few steps, because as much as I hope and I think that what we do here in the program and what so many of you do out there, you just kind of forget that it's actually happening. It just is a little deflating in just thinking about the efforts that we're trying to do here and try to minimize workplace injuries and fatalities, obviously. But a reminder of just how many of you do care was relevant by the number of emails that I received regarding this fatality, and to me, that was the only slightly upside. I wish nobody would have to send me an email regarding any kind of accident like this, and I don't want to be the first one to be sent these types of these incidents. But reality is that I believe that Josh Bosch, who was the technician, had a family. I believe reports indicate he was 38 years old, married, 2 daughters, and the rest of their lives are going to be changed forever. And it's just heartbreaking. So, but again, thank you for emailing me those links and those notes. I appreciate it. Just be vigilant. Be vigilant in what you're doing each and every day, and in the work that you do to ensure that you're safe, those that are around you are safe, and those that ride our equipment are safe. So I just wanted to send that thought out, and obviously our thoughts go out to Josh's family, his wife, and his 2 daughters. So stay vigilant in the work and the safety that we do and we think about every day. But it's hard. It is hard. I feel like every time I read one of these articles, I just feel like giving up, and I know that's not the right attitude to have, but it just seems like a fight that's so hard to fight, and it takes reminders like your emails and other people out there who are fighting the same fight to try to minimize any kind of accidents. I mean, I've got cousins in the industry, if something were to happen to them, I know that would be awful for everybody, and it's one of those things that will change you forever, and not in a good way for those that are surviving and left behind. So, just continue to be vigilant. So, okay, Kate, we do have a shorter show today for you today. Just wanted to get that out of there, and it's just disturbing. It's like choking me up just thinking about it. So get into the news, and you should be out of here in no time.
Let this week's news stories give you a lift on what's happening in the vertical transportation arena. Each news segment is organically dug and fresh with news stories of the week. Got lift? If not, stay tuned.
So news regarding the fatality in North Dakota did come from the IUEC, Constructors Local Number 10, Washington, D.C., and that link is in the notes there. Obviously, just make sure you are doing everything you possibly can to make sure you are safe and those around you who are working on the same equipment are safe as well. Okay, that's just very, 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 very important. Next news article I found was a little bit concerning to me. I did not realize that, and I could be wrong on this. Maybe this investigative report is incorrect as well. But KOB4, Channel 4 News, has an article. It leads New Mexico doesn't require elevator safety inspections, and just to clarify, they did in the article confirm that the city of Albuquerque does require them, but as far as the state is concerned, they are not. There is an Elevator Safety Act bill on the floor for debate, and it just seems to be taking a long time to get through the process. So yeah, I didn't realize that New Mexico had that issue. But if you want to watch the full video, it is in the show note links there, and you can watch it. And yeah, it's just everybody wants to make sure your equipment is safe, and Elevator Code helps do that. It helps provide guidelines for maintenance and inspections and whatnot. So so check that out. Link is in the show notes. Next article I found, HabitatMag.com has an interesting article which ties into some of the requirements that New York City is enacting or promoting, and the certain dates, but does the audience for this article are the building owners, are the condo associations, and kind of what needs to be done and what needs to be looked at, and how expensive things can be, and just stuff like that. What's also interesting are the comments here in the right-hand column, Board Talk, where Elevator, they just have a bunch of notes regarding some stupid things and other things. So I pee in my front door, elevator logbook's not updated. So just a bunch of stuff that, interesting information that does provide some help when, if you're a contractor trying to share some of that with, educate the building owner. Not always easy to do, but perhaps if everybody had a better idea of the length of time some of these projects do take, what could go wrong, what might go wrong, I think, everybody might have a better respect for just being patient and it taking just time to do some of those upgrades. Next news article, firefighting or fireengineering.com had an article talking about elevator rescue. It's kind of a general article, but if you scroll on the page there, you're going to see what is a photo of an elevator man sitting on an elevator floor, and the floor of the elevator is actually jacked up, maybe, 5.5, 6 feet off, probably about 5 feet off the ground. And what is interesting here is the length of the tow guard. Okay, the photo itself just indicates how to use a door wedge, but what I like to see here is the length of the tow guard, because that tow guard is going to make it very difficult for anyone who attempts to get out of a stalled elevator like this from jumping down and then falling into the elevator shaft in the opening underneath the elevator floor. Just remember, the safest place for you to be if you are stalled in an elevator is inside the elevator. So, but again, I'm glad to see that there's not specific information that relates to trying to unentrap or uninstall or for the general riding public is what I'm getting at. I cringe whenever I see certain specific technical details launched or released that would maybe cause a public person or somebody in the general public from trying to do something and helping, get somebody out of an elevator, which you should never do. Curb New York has an article, MTA must add elevators when renovating station rules, federal judge. I think this is good. And I don't know how it could not have been included, but disability rights advocates sued the MTA in 2016, charging that the authority neglected to install an elevator during the more than $27 million renovation for the elevated Midtown Road station on Line 6. And again, I know there's lots of issues that relate to adding elevators to stations, including the age and all that stuff, but you got to think that at some point something has to change. And if you're putting $27 million into renovating a platform, you'd think that there would be some type of plan, depending on what's included in that to make it more accessible. So, yeah. And I have another article that kind of links up with that here in Chicago. Rotor and Wing International magazine has an article talking about Sikorsky, wants to make air taxis as safe, reliable as elevators. I don't know about you, but if they're using the same technology that elevators use to control self-driving helicopters, that concerns me a little bit. I got to tell you, the technology that is used in most elevator systems is pretty dated, and it's pretty simple. And I don't mean that, I'm not bashing anything, but it's an elevator that goes and collects calls throughout the floors. Even destination dispatch is not terrifically advanced, and I would not want to put that same technology into a self-driving or self-flying helicopter, would you? But I just thought it was kind of funny. I think it's a cool idea, and I think the partnership is pretty neat. But the reality is that Sikorsky is partnering on a new urban air mobility endeavor. Video released on March 4th, Sikorsky announced its partnership with the elevator manufacturer and the spaceship company to bring its technologies to bear on new urban air mobile market. You got to think, if you're an engineer designing control, elevator controllers and whatnot, you'd be like, man, like how far, what else can you do with them? They just go up and down. You can go side by side, sideways as well. But at the same time, it's like, man, it's just how much different can you make them? How much, how can you reinvent it so it's different? And I guess this is one way of, doing it. So being ready to see if that ever comes to fruition. I think that honestly, if cars themselves were able to sensor, provide better sensor technology or forward-looking infrared radar or whatever that abbreviation is, if they were able to do more of that and cars could control how fast they drive collectively rather than not collectively, I think that might be a better technology boom or better solution for congestion and traffic and all that stuff. So I thought it was interesting. Next news article, CTA excuse. This is a blog, Streets Blog Chicago. Question here is CTA excuse for not adding elevators to Belmont Blue legitimate? And now the Blue Line here in Chicago goes from O'Hare Airport downtown. And when you look at this photograph here, this is what kind of kills me in the whole perspective of these types of renovations. Look at the canopy on this photo. And if you're listening to the podcast, just go to elevatorradioshow.com and do a keyword search for the show, which is 524 or 525, any one of those. And if you look at this photograph, you're going to see this canopy that looks pretty involved and pretty extensive, pretty architectural, pretty, I'm an architect, I'm going to put my mark on the station kind of, design element here. Something that looks not so standard. The reality here is you wonder how much money was spent on that compared to actually looking at or trying to figure out if, in fact, a elevator could be added. Because when you look at just this design element, and by no means am I any type of architect, this is pretty major. You're talking about something pretty major, pretty costly. And in today's world, when there are very, I shouldn't say easy or simple, there are systems that can be dropped in place that are elevators that allow buildings to be accessible or platforms. And I just don't understand why that kind of money is spent on some of these renovations and making them more accessible is not part of that It's not part of that equation. Reality is that we have an aging population. Not every station can have an escalator. I understand that. But at the same time, if you've ever had to navigate the world that we live in, either with crutches or with a wheelchair, or your mobility was decreased for whatever reason, there's the reality is that the world is not a very friendly place. It's much friendlier in some places than others, but the reality is it's just not. So, the author of the blog post kind of finished up saying, I can understand the reasons, but is it legit? It probably is legit on when you take a look at the costs associated. But at the same time, it would be nice if those types of design elements were incorporated for like some 10-year plan and said, okay, 10 years, we're going to have elevators here. All right. Okay. Next article, Forbes has got an article, which I've been saying this all along. So Carlton Reed, I think you took my expression, but it's absolutely true. Driverless vehicles will transform cities? ? One already has. It's called the elevator. Yes, it has. Absolutely. But again, I really hope that the technology that self-driving cars is used is a little bit more advanced than what the elevators are in our industry. But it's still cool to see elevators making it into Forbes magazine. So Carlton, thank you for doing that. And the last news article for this week's program: which states are most lethal to work in? Now, this does not necessarily relate as it does to elevators per se. The actual article was linked up in Woodworking Network magazine, and it's I'd recommend anybody who wants to do a little more research and to visit the website that's linked in here, which I believe they've cited or credited Injury Claim Coach, because I believe they are the entity that has tracked either through the BLS.gov website, or maybe they've just made that information pretty. That's probably what they did. But regardless, it's interesting to see the types of injuries that occur, also how fatalities are happen related to specific jobs, not I guess general jobs, not specific jobs. And it'd be even more interesting to see, construction and extraction is the number one fatal hazard at 25.6% in the construction industry. Yeah, construction is dangerous. Slips and falls are part of that. So these are all kind of go through a lot of what our workers do each day. Just not good. We want to try to minimize all this in any industry for that matter. And I think if all the trades work together and trying to do that, they can make a difference. So hopefully we can all do that. But if anyone wants to read more about that and you have a little bit of time to kill on your hands, by all means, check that out. And show link is in the bottom of the page. So, well, that's going to do it for the show, everybody. As I noted earlier, not a ton of content, but that we do have in the show is pretty relevant and pretty hard-hitting homes. So remember safety. Please think about the Bosch family this upcoming week as they say goodbye to their dad, their husband, their son, and just put all that in perspective when you get out of bed each day. And that's all I got. So we'll talk to you next Wednesday. Be safe and take care. Bye-bye.